Good afternoon. Kate here from the Safeguarding Association for another safeguarding spotlight this afternoon. Today, I want to talk to you about policy to people. We're at the start of um, almost the second half of the academic first term. The people are embedded, starting to feel comfortable in their positions within apprenticeships, that rolling in and out. New staff are there, all starting to find their feet, all starting to feel a bit more comfortable than perhaps they were at the start of term. And I want to talk about why behavioural change is the missing link from getting your policy from paper into that lived experience of staff, learners, students within your organisation. And I I think this is really important. I think there's a lot of focus that happens in terms of policies and procedures for really good reason. We need, and if you've read any of my blogs or you've been part of my world for a while, you will know that I am really um, passionate about making sure we've got the right foundations in place. You absolutely have to have good policies, good procedures, good processes in place because otherwise it will all, you've got nothing to stand on. But those policies and procedures are only as good as the amount that they are used. And I don't just mean in terms of appropriately following the procedures, but I mean really thinking about the ethos you want in your organization and how you want that to actually be lived by your staff, by your students, by anybody who comes into contact with you. Um, the the thing I find with lots of organizations, particularly those within the commercial sector who are bringing in more and more apprentices, is that they often struggle with understanding where safeguarding sits. And it can often be seen as we're going to put this in this little box over here. There's a safeguarding policy, there's a safeguarding procedure. Any problems, you've got the safeguarding lead. Us as senior leaders, we don't need to be involved. You need to go to you need to go to the safeguarding lead, if indeed there is a safeguarding lead. But what that misses is a real opportunity for that top-down embedding of the culture that you want to see within your organisation. Because that safeguarding culture comes from within. It's not a document. It's not a particular person. It's a whole cultural world. It's a whole sphere that all plays its part in making sure that once in your environment, everybody feels safe to be there. Now, I wholly appreciate that that really isn't taken up by Ofsted. They're not, you get a pass or fail in terms of safeguarding, and it sits within the leadership element. And very often you are kind of digging for sentences within an Ofsted report that will tell you whether your safeguarding practices are really working the way you want them to. And often that's a single line that says something along the lines of staff and students report that they feel safe within this environment. And I know from the work I do as safeguarding independent chair, as trustee, as trainer, as critical friend, how really, really difficult that is, not only to embed in the first place, but also to maintain, particularly if you're an organisation that is going through change, that is growing, that is expanding, that is bringing on new sites, things like that. That is really, really difficult to do. But I want to suggest, perhaps a bit more than suggest if you know me well, um, that actually that doesn't start with your safeguarding lead. That starts right at the top. That starts with your CEO. It starts with your governors. It starts with your principals. Starts with your vice chancellor. It starts right up there with how you want the university, how you want the the company, the training provision, whatever it is, to be seen and perceived by the rest of the world, and how you want people to feel inside the organization. You can have really stringent rules. Lots of you will have to because of the nature of the work that you do. You will have lots of health and safety guidance that you've got to follow. But that doesn't mean that you forget everything else and focus solely on that particular element. There are other things you can be doing in order to make sure that you have got the right culture in place for your staff, for your students, for your learners, for your clients and your customers. Um, because actually, things like safeguarding, equality, we're hearing lots about the Equality Act at the moment, about sustainability, that's another area that's growing. Um, these aren't static policy areas. They're not things that you draw once, put in a cupboard, and don't worry about unless there's an incident. They're things that you will need to live and breathe as part of your company or organizational culture. They are there when senior leaders decide that that is going to be the environment, the culture, the workspace that they want to create, and they live it. Because there is no point saying, yes, we're going to be this sort of organization if all of your actions are doing the opposite thing. That really isn't going to, and you feel it as somebody who walks into that organization, you feel that clash of this is what we tell everybody we are, but this is what we really are. That's really, really obvious in terms of a feeling that people will get. They may not be able to articulate what it is, but they will absolutely get a feeling that something isn't quite right. So I am going to urge you in today's safeguarding spotlight to really think as senior leaders about the culture, the messages, the environment that you are creating for your staff, for your students, for your learners, for your clients. How do you want them to feel when they come into work? How do you want them to behave when they are here? What do you want them to walk out with at the end of the day, end of the week, before they go on leave? What do you want that to be? And how are you going to do it? Well, the how actually, oddly, is fairly obvious. It starts with you. It starts with you as a senior leader, making sure that the rest of the senior leadership team and managers all come from the same place. Might not be the same style, but you come from the same place. So, how are you responding when there are bad news or near misses? Are you going straight in for blame, or are you taking a step back? Are you looking at how do we learn from this? What can we do? What steps can we take? How do we debrief? How do we make sure everybody else is safe? What do we need to do? Are we going down the accountability route? How are we framing that accountability? Again, are we blaming one person, or are we looking about how we learn from that situation? Did our structures work? Did our policies and procedures work? Did our processes work? Did our tech work? Was there something else that we could have done differently? How do we twist this? How do we tweak this to make this work better next time? How are we talking about our goals? Are we talking about compliance targets, or are we talking about shared responsibilities? Are we talking about you must do or we must do? What does that look like? And there will be some yous and we's and I's that need to be in there. Um, but how is that framed? How is that working? What does that look like? And how are senior leaders, governors, trustees approaching challenge? Are they coming at it from a place of curiosity? Um, or are they coming at it from a place of criticism? Remember, you could have a whole team of people who are absolutely on board with the culture that you want to bring in and that you want to embed and that you want to have. But if you've got one person, and I've seen this happen too many times, who is absolutely not on board, who is absolutely determined that they are not going to go down that route, they are not going to be that person, they are not going to get on board with it, If that one person is allowed to perpetuate that process, that belief system, that attitude, then it doesn't matter how hard you are going to work to create that culture, it is going to fall down. And it's going to fall down really badly if the person who is perpetuating that avoidance of doing anything collectively or collaboratively or wanting to really sit within that culture of vigilance and safety is at the top of the tree. This absolutely comes from a top down position. And I see so many safeguarding leads who are desperately trying to embed a safe culture, a culture of vigilance, a culture of awareness, a culture of trust. And it's just not accepted by senior leaders. And if it's not accepted by senior leaders, it is never, ever going to feel safe as a member of staff to say that you are worried about a learner or another member of staff or about something that is going on within the organisation. It absolutely has to be modelled behaviour. It has to come from the top. It has to then flow down um, and be part of that culture. This is really difficult, if not nigh on impossible, to do from an upward trajectory. Because yes, there are more people at the bottom, but the people at the top are the ones who hold the purse strings, the one who will be doing disciplinaries, the ones who will be dealing with grievances. And if they are not modelling that curiosity, that compassion, that inquisitiveness, that learning culture, then you are really never going to get that in place. Doesn't matter how hard you try, it is nigh on impossible to put that in place if that is what is happening. Because remember, good governance isn't about policy or process alone. It's absolutely about people. It's about understanding what makes them tick, what was going on in any of those safeguarding reports that you share with governors or with senior leaders. What things are needed to be changed, what needs to be developed, what's working from a human perspective. Just because somebody, and we've done this time and again, somebody in an office somewhere decides that this is the best thing to happen, it's then rolled out and it just doesn't work. Either because it's not really where things like documents being stored in one particular place doesn't quite work because that's not the way that people have always used it. It's also not an intuitive place for it to be kept. Um, it gets easier to just not really challenge that behavior. So then you slip back into old habits. It's really thinking about what are we rewarding here? What are we tolerating? And what is it we're ignoring? And those are three really, really important questions for senior leaders to be asking themselves when it comes to safeguarding. What behaviors are we rewarding? What are we tolerating? And what are we ignoring? And if you do nothing else following this spotlight, I would urge you to really think about those three questions and think about within your organization, what are they? What are the answers to those questions? And then importantly, as part of that reflection process, what are you going to do about it? What needs to change immediately? What might need some tweaking? And what is everything okay? Do you need to change anything else that sits as part of that? Those three questions will really, really help you uncover what your culture's really, really like, because what you see at the top may not be what is actually going on underneath the surface. And remember, any of this that you're struggling with, this isn't easy stuff. Let me be really clear. I work in this environment with local authorities all of the time, and it's really hard to change that culture, but it is possible. It is absolutely possible. So if you are looking at what your culture looks like, if you are looking for audits, or if you just want a critical friend that you can come to when this experience inevitably becomes really difficult and challenging, then get in touch, send me a message. Let's have a conversation about how I can support you and your senior leaders as you make your way through this process. You can get in touch via any of the platforms or via the website and send me a message. And I would be more than happy to have a conversation about how we can help you really embed this culture of vigilance, and to make sure that you are absolutely living your policies and procedures and they aren't just sitting there in a box and not see the light of day until there is an incident. I'm Kit Founders. I'm the CEO of the Safeguarding Association. And until next time,